I know everybody's hyped up for Zeldas and his ominous nebula, but Escanor won the chapter. His little convo with Rudisill was by far one of the funniest things in a while in Taizai. Like, when the man straight up, Rudisill's like, you do know my word is from one of the greatest beings in the world, and he's like, frankly, I don't give a hoot. And I'm just like Escanor, like my boy Escanor, he never has any chill. And then what made me lose it, or I just started laughing uncontrollably, was when all of a sudden Rudisill's just sitting there arguing with Escanor, and Escanor's like, I don't give a hoot and all that, and all of a sudden, Rudisill literally flies off of Escanor's back, and he's like, oh no, what a shame. Like, the man was gonna let Rudisill just get hit in the face. And granted, Rudisill kind of deserves it, but just still, like, my boy Escanor not having any chill whatsoever. Like, seriously, it's one of the reasons why I love his character, because his one-liners are easily one of the best things about this series, or at least his character. He has the best, just one-liners. Like, I have never seen a character just deliver so many funny lines that's just so serious, fits with his character, and you're just like, man, how can you not love this character and just be excited every time he pops up? Like, when the man is just acting like he did in this chapter, like, especially when the ominous nebula, hit, and you just see how everybody's being sucked in, you just see Escanor grunt, he's like, and you just see him stomp his, feet in the ground slowly, and he's like, and he just stands up like this. I'm like, oh my god, like, this man, Escanor, he's amazing. I really love how Escanor, how he brute forces everything. Like, the man just, shoved his legs into the ground just to stop himself from flying away, and he was just sitting there, doing, and all that. Funny stuff. But okay, so let's talk about the main important part about this chapter of Taizai. Besides Escanor, obviously, it's important, but, let's talk about Zeldas, Gelda, and just, what could be potentially happening in the next chapter and chapters to come. So, we got a really stunning revelation. Gelda, Zeldas' girlfriend, is still alive, apparently, which, in a lot of ways, does make sense, because if we think about Mellie Otis, and now we know a lot about his character, his situation, what he's been through for 3,000 plus years, and then not even counting purgatory and all that. I mean, we know that Mellie Otis is a good person deep down, and even though Gelda, we thought she might have been dead, now knowing kind of how Mellie Otis is, and how his situation was very similar to Zelda's situation, I think that's probably the reason why he didn't actually end Gelda's life. He decided to re-seal her, which, I think is a pretty good, thing that Mellie Otis did. It was really nice of him, because, at the end of the day, Zeldas is his brother, and you even see traits that Zeldas is very similar to Mellie Otis. It's not just the fact that Zeldas has someone he's interested in, like he loves, for instance, Gelda, but it's also the fact that what he said in this chapter even, made Cusack get a little bit upset, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But basically, Zeldas acted very similar to Mellie Otis in this chapter, and it makes a lot of sense now why Mellie Otis, respected Zeldas and allowed, Gelda to live, didn't actually end her life, and allowed her to just to be sealed until one day Zeldas can be reunited with her. So, let's talk about that. So, Zeldas, he says, I don't really give a crap about the Holy War. He actually legitimately just says that in this chapter. And when he says that, you're like, whoa, that's actually kind of crazy he's saying something like that, because it's very reminiscent of, Mellie Otis. Mellie Otis, he didn't give a crap about the Holy War. He didn't want nothing to do with it. He just wanted to be with Elizabeth and be happy. That's what he wanted. He just wanted to end it and be happy with Elizabeth. In a lot of ways, I think that Zeldas probably feels the exact same way. Now that he knows that the one he loves is still technically alive and all that, obviously, he wants to have a happily ever after with her. And I feel like, him, thinking that way in this chapter, he's like, I don't give a crap about the Holy War, is very reminiscent to how Mellie Otis was. And that's why Cusack kind of perked up, and you saw how he got a little bit upset. There was a quick little panel to we see that Cusack was upset. And this actually has me kind of concerned, which I'm going to talk about. See, if we back up for a second and think about how Taizai began in the first place, like the story where we're at right now, we know the reason why all these events have happened is thanks to Mellie Otis betraying the Demon Clan and then working with Elizabeth, and, you know, they fell in love. And we know that the Demon King and the Supreme Goddess, they don't like that whatsoever. I mean, we know they don't like that. It's just something that they do not want to happen, and so obviously Mellie Otis and Elizabeth were cursed, and we know the rest. Well, basically, the reason why this happened was because Mellie Otis and Elizabeth, they upset the balance, and it caused it to where one side was stronger than the other, and there was going to be a true end to this holy war. Nobody really liked that, and because of that, you had it to where, you know, they had a curse placed on top of them. And Zelda is saying what he said, like, you know, look, you know, I don't care about the holy war and all that, and his only objective is just to be with Gelda once again, to get Mellie Otis to become the Demon King for he can be with Gelda. It shows that he's very similar to Mellie Otis, and Cusack will notice this, and he'll be like, whoa, I don't want my person, like the one I've been teaching for a very long time, the potential Demon King, to actually turn out very similar to Mellie Otis, a traitor. So I feel like Cusack is probably going to take matters into his own hands. He might try to do something to Gelda to be able to allow Zeldas to want to be the next Demon King. Because obviously Cusack is a little bit upset about that. He's always someone that's, you know, been backing Zelda since the very beginning. He's always wanted to back the man. It's like, you can be the Demon King. And in a lot of ways, when you look at Zelda's power in this chapter, he's ridiculous. He is definitely strong. Like, Ominous Nebula is definitely not something you can brush off and say is weak by any means. But I'm just saying, though, that Cusack has always been pro-Zeldas, wanted Zeldas to be the Demon King, and obviously Zeldas gave that up because Mellie Otis walked in, he's like, Gelda's alive, you know, she's just sealed, and once I become the Demon King, I will make sure she's free once again, and you can have her. But there's definitely a lot of things here that could go wrong, because it seems like Cusack, if he's anything like Chandler, you know what Chandler did. Remember Chandler, he didn't like how Elizabeth was having Mellie Otis on her side, and he went out of his way to try to get rid of Elizabeth. He could not stand Elizabeth whatsoever, and so if we can get anything from Chandler, Cusack is probably going to act very similar. So, yeah. Anyways, let's get into Ominous Nebula. Let's talk about Zelda's power and what it's technically capable of so far from what we can see. So number one, it's clear as day that he's kind of like some form of black hole or gravity distortion to where everything is literally being sucked into him. Now, not technically everything. Only living beings are being sucked into Zelda's, and if it's like, you know, an inanimate object, like, you know, an object that's not alive, like dirt or whatever, it's not going to move. You even see that, and that's the reason why, you know, Cusack, why Chandler, and why Escanor were able to just stay in their position like they are without really even having any trouble, was because the ground technically doesn't move whatsoever, only them. So if they can position themselves deep within the ground like a root or something, then they're not going to be pulled out because the ground will not move thanks to Ominous Nebula. So yeah, it makes sense why Escanor was able to stay in the ground, and I think the reason why Escanor was able to realize that was probably because he saw what Cusack and Chandler did. He's like, okay, let me replicate what they're doing and I'll be able to stay safe, because they also put themselves in the wall. If you look very closely in this chapter, that's how Cusack and Chandler were, you know, negating what Zeldas was doing, and that's the reason why they backed up, was because it does not, you know, kind of determine between friend or foe. It attacks everybody in a radius, and so you should not be around this individual, which I think is definitely foreshadowing to Mellie Otis' ability, which let's talk about that for a second. As we know, Mellie Otis' ability, Destroyer or whatever, we don't really know exactly what it does, but it's very clear now after seeing what Zeldas is capable of, that whatever Mellie Otis is going to be capable of is some form of aura effect that's probably not going to be able to determine between friend or foe, and it's just going to hurt everybody around him, and I feel like that's probably the reason why he never wanted to use it, was because if he did use it, it would probably hurt even the people he cared most about, Elizabeth, you know, the 7 deadly sins, all of that. So I think that's one of the big reasons to why maybe he didn't want to use it, because if we see anything, Zelda's ability can also hurt his friends if they're not aware of it, or if they don't, you know, guard themselves and try to be away from Zelda's, they would get hurt, which I'm kind of curious on how large his radius is. We didn't really get a description on that, how wide this radius is, how far he can literally suck people into his Ominous Nebula. We don't really know about that one, but let's get a little bit more into his abilities or what he's kind of capable of. So besides it just being like a gravity well or something, or being able to suck things in like a black hole, we also do know that once you are sucked into its core, you're repelled out. You're completely repelled out, and you're hit by some unknown attack, and then the process repeats once again. So we don't know exactly how the unknown attack works. We don't know exactly, how large the radius is, but we do know at the very least, it seems like he is very resistant to all physical and magical attacks. Maybe not to the level of Ruler, like, how the Demon King was, how he was able to basically negate everything. I don't think it's kind of like that. I think it works very differently, but I do think that he has high resistance and all that, clearly from what he showed when Rudisill tried to attack him, even Merlin and all that, so I feel like it's going to take a lot to be able to bring Zeldas down, but I also think a weakness of him is that because he's literally absorbing everything, that everything will continuously be redirected at him, so if someone keeps, firing at him, eventually it's probably going to break through his defenses. Now, we don't really know how much, say, magic power, how much strain or stamina this is putting on Zeldas. We don't really know. We don't really know his upper limits and all that, and how long he can actually maintain this ability. For all we know, that this ability can only be on for maybe a couple minutes to maybe weeks at a time. We don't really know how long this ability can be activated, but I want to assume it's probably going to be very draining on his stamina if he continuously has it activated while negating physical and magical attacks over and over again. But yeah, that's pretty much the chapter, besides Rudisill basically saving Hindi once again, which, by the way, the more and more I see Rudisill's interactions with Hindi, the more and more I believe Rudisill might be falling for Hindi. I don't know, I'm getting that feeling, because the way he acted, he's like, oh, you never cease to worry me and all that, I'm like, I'm sensing something between these two, and I just wonder where Nakaba Sensei's taking that, because, it's very clear that there is some implied things going on there, some yaoi action and all that, which we'll see. We'll definitely see. But anyways, I want to end this video here. I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. If you like this video, please leave a like. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click the bell icon down below. And with that, Chibi out.